Me and my friends had planned out this exciting camping trip to Appalachia. We had an Airbnb and everything prepared. Okay, don't judge me. I didn't want to sleep in a tent. Anyways, it would be a nice change of pace from Iowa. I'd take trees over cornfields any days. The only caveat was the 12-hour drive. Now, before I continue the story, I'll introduce my friends so none of you all are confused. I've got 3 other friends. There's Emma, Matt, and Parker. We had brought along Emma's little brother, who I'll call C since he's a minor. Emma's parents were arrested for things that aren't really important for this story, but now C's under Emma's legal guardianship, and she couldn't find a babysitter for him. None of us really cared. In fact, we thought C was cool. Anyways, we arrived at the Airbnb and unpacked. There were 3 rooms, so I got a room alone. Matt and Parker got a room together, and Emma and C got a room together. I got lucky. Now, it was around 6 p.m.-ish, probably. So we decided to set up a campfire and start roasting marshmallows. We ended up forgetting the marshmallows. No matter, me and Matt decided to go drive to the nearest town and pick up some from the store. C wasn't happy, but we assured him that we'll be back in 10 minutes. While driving to the store, me and Matt talked about Appalachia, maybe. We'll see a skinwalker, said Matt. Dude, shut up. Aren't those things located in Navajo territories? There is no way we'd encounter one here in Appalachia, I said. And I knew I was right. We arrived at the local convenience store and argued over what kind of marshmallows we should get. I suggested regular marshmallows. Matt suggested pink marshmallows. We eventually came to a decision, and I bought a Hershey's bar as well, since I figured we'd need extra, considering how much of a fat-ass Parker is when it comes to candy. After paying, we drove back to the Airbnb. C told me that he saw a deer and was very proud of getting close to it. Emma affirmed this. Apparently, this deer's eyes were on the front of its head, but it didn't appear hostile, so she let C get close enough to it to not disturb it in any way. In addition to roasting marshmallows, we'd be making burgers and hot dogs. We lit the fireplace and began cooking the meats. That is when a hiker walked up to our campfire. He had a duffel bag, introduced himself as Josh. He asks if he could use our campfire. We were weirded out, but agreed. Josh opened his duffel bag, revealing a bunch of different kinds of meat. There was chicken, beef, venison, and what looked like pork. Emma questioned this, and Josh states that he thinks it's pork. He found it in a cooler tucked underneath a blind. According to Josh, there was no one around, so he took it. Emma immediately states that she wants the pork. She absolutely loves bacon. Josh shrugs and agrees, but does warn Emma that he didn't know how long the pork was left out there. Emma ignored his warning and insisted on having it. Parker spoke with Josh, while me, Emma, and Matt were trying not to horribly burn the meats. Once finished, I had some burgers. Matt and Parker ate some hot dogs and some of Josh's game, while Emma ate the pork. Emma started to feel sick. Damn, so the pork was left out for a while. Josh just threw out the rest of the pork, and Emma went to go puke. We finished eating dinner and began roasting marshmallows. We had way too many marshmallows, so we couldn't actually finish them all, but as expected, Parker's fat ass finished the Hershey's bar. I went in to check on Emma. She had finished puking, and she looked a little pale. Not a sickly pale, just drained. I told her to take some Pepto and get some sleep. I didn't want to hold to make her feel bad or think that she somehow ruined this trip. I went back outside to wave a goodbye Josh, who warned about black bears. Then me, Parker, Matt, and C hung out for an hour before it started to sprinkle and then rain. We went inside and decided to just go to sleep. Emma didn't want to sleep in the same room as C since she was sick with God knows what and didn't want it to spread to C. Matt figured it was just food poisoning, but still. Had C crash in my room, instead get thrown at the window. I turned my head to look at the window, nothing but darkness. Something about it didn't sit right with me. I got up and walked to the living room. I had to make sure if I locked all the doors. The floor creaked under every step I made. I checked the front door, locked. I checked the back door, locked as well. But then I heard Emma's voice. She was on the other end of the glass door. "Let me in," said Emma. I looked through the glass door and didn't see anyone. But then again, I couldn't see anything much at all. "Emma, what are you doing out there?" I asked. It took her a second to respond, but she eventually did. A simple, "It's cold." This struck me as odd, so I went to Emma's room and found her, sleeping on her bed, facing away from the door. I froze. If Emma was here, then who was outside? I slowly closed the door, but stopped. I noticed she was in the fetal position while sleeping and mumbling. The fetal position wasn't the strange part. She did puke a few hours earlier, but the mumbling. Emma doesn't talk in her sleep. I know that for a fact, and what she was mumbling was weird. She was mumbling in no language I recognized. Di grabbed the desk lamp, just in case. I pushed the door open and walked in. I held the lamp-like weapon. I looked as she turned over to face me, and then she opened her eyes. We both screamed, and I dropped the lamp. To her, it looked like I was going to hit her over the head, and her scream had startled me. Parker and Matt walked into the room. They looked annoyed. "The hell happened?" asked Matt. I explained that I heard Emma's voice outside. I looked at Emma. She looked fine, too fine. She didn't look like she threw up only hours prior. I looked at her pillow. A little bit of her hair was on the pillow, like it fell out. We walked out to the living room, and Parker opened the back door and stepped outside, only to soaked by the rain. However, a cold, eerily cold breeze crept into the Airbnb. It stepped out with Parker and turned on my phone to use it as a flashlight. We saw footprints, human footprints. Me and Parker went, "Oh hell no," and went inside, locked the door, and we barricaded the shit out of it. Emma asked if it was Josh. Matt shot down that idea. Josh was far too nice, not the stalk innocent campus type. Suddenly, we heard a knock on the back door. "Hey, open up," said a voice that sounded exactly like Josh. Emma snapped. Go to hell, it was out of character for her. It almost seemed territorial. The thing outside stopped. It began circling the Airbnb, tapping on the walls, before seeming to leave. We all decided to just go back to sleep. Day 2, the events of the previous night were still imprinted into our brains. We made breakfast, which Emma swallowed up like it was her last meal. We agreed to cut the trip short. After breakfast, we packed up and went outside, only to find my van's tires slashed. Shit. Our phones didn't have service due to the storm the previous night, and the closest town was a mile or so away if we wanted to get new tires. We'd have to push the car through the forest for a mile, but we didn't have a choice. We put C in the car, along with Emma and me. Parker and Matt began to push. However, we stopped. Yeah, it'd be hard, even harder downhill. The road winds and twist. It'll roll downhill and right into a tree if we'd push it. We were trapped. We accepted defeat and just went back inside the Airbnb. I silently prayed that we wouldn't have to stay a second night in this godforsaken place. Emma kept getting hungry and ate through a majority of our snacks. Everyone was getting weirded out by her behavior. I went outside to look at the tracks from the previous night. Human, yes, absolutely. I followed them. I wasn't stupid, so I didn't follow them into the tree lines. I saw how they seemed to shift into that of a bear. I stepped back and ran back to the Airbnb. Before entering, I saw a truck pass and waved them down. It was Josh. He thanked me for letting him cook dinner for himself at the fire pit. Josh then looked at my van and saw the slashed tires. "Damn," he said, "what happened?" "I don't know," I told him. I then asked if he was outside the Airbnb last night. Josh looked at me and said that his home is decently far from here. He was not here. Josh, however, said something that almost made me jump. He could attach my van to his truck and drive us to the town. I agreed and thanked him. I ran inside to get the others. We watched from the porch as Josh knelt by the hitch. Eventually, he let us get in and began driving us to the town. I was in the passenger seat of his truck, while the others were crammed in the van. I looked at the tree line. I could swear I could see a shadow dash between the trees. Josh broke the silence and asked where I was from. I told him, and he laughed, a nervous laugh. Josh glanced towards the trees and asked if I had seen that too. I froze. He had seen it too. That thing between the trees. I could see Josh started to panic slightly. He pressed harder on the gas. Whatever was out there, it was chasing us. It didn't want us to leave. Josh honked the horn in a clear attempt to scare it away, but it didn't. We noticed the most putrid odor that I have ever smelt. It was so pungent that even with the windows closed, we could still smell it. It followed us all the way until we made it to the town. Josh drove us to the car shop and unattached my van. We paid for new tires and put them on. Finally, we could leave. We thanked Josh one final time and then began driving all the way back to Iowa. I prayed it didn't follow us home. It didn't seem to follow us, and we drove back without issue except for Emma. She was off, a little more violent, and it even started freaking out. See, she insisted on beef jerky instead of her typical spicy chips. She barely spoke after that, never replied to texts, never picked up our calls, and barely attended our college classes. None of it, in fact. Last I saw of her was recently, when she picked up C from his first day of school. She seemed off, thinner, hollow even. Eyes were sunken in. I walked up to her and tried talking with her. She said nothing and just got into her car. I spoke to C. He told me that he didn't feel safe with her anymore. I'm concerned for Emma and C. I don't know what happened to her. If anyone out there has any ideas of what I could do, please tell me, because I don't know what to do now. My girlfriend and I are from St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. We both attended university there and decided to take a road trip through the United States to celebrate our graduation. Our destination was Miami, Florida. Her family owns a condo near the beach, so we had a free place to stay. We decided to drive instead of fly because we wanted to see a bit of the country on the way down and visit a few friends. The trip usually takes about 20 to 24 hours by car non-stop, and we were planning on making multiple stops. The first part of the road trip was a wonderful experience. We went shopping in Buffalo, then made our way down to Pittsburgh and managed to catch a Pirates game. However, Once we hit West Virginia, things changed. It was nothing but endless wilderness and a few small towns. Sprinkled in between, we had plans to meet up with some friends for dinner in Charlotte, North Carolina, so we wanted to get through West Virginia ASAP. We only made stops when we absolutely had to. We ended up stopping for gas at a pretty remote spot. My girlfriend and I got out of the car. I started pumping gas and she went inside to use the washroom and pick up some snacks. My tank was about half full when I heard a voice behind me ask, "You're lost." I looked behind me and I saw a middle-aged white man with long, messy brown hair that reached down to his shoulders, and an unkempt beard with dashes of grays and what looked to be drops of dried-up mucus. His clothes were torn up and dirty, and he smelled like a mixture of beer, sweat, pee, and feces. He was a little overweight but pretty tall. I'm 6'0", and he was about 4 inches taller than me. The teeth he still had left were a yellowish brown. On his right cheek, just under his eye, was a tattoo of some kind of pentagram. I'm pretty into YouTube videos about true crime and cults, so I was able to recognize what it was pretty quickly. He was standing very close to my face, to the point where the smell of his breath was making me dizzy, so I backed up. "No sir, just passing through," I said nervously. "Not too often we see tourists passing through these parts," he responded. "Where y'all headed?" As he said this, he moved even closer than he was before. I had my back up against my car and I couldn't move back any further. I wanted to get away from this guy as quickly as possible, but the car was still filling up with gas and my girlfriend was still inside the gas station. Didn't want this dude to know where we were really going, so I told him I was visiting family in Kentucky and they were expecting us. After I said this, he cracked a weird half smile, opening his mouth just wide enough for me to get a look at his teeth again. I'll never forget that face. His bloodshot eyes were staring deep into my soul. He let out a weird and sinister laugh. "How lovely," he said. "I'll see you kids around." Then he walked away. I was very relieved that he walked away, but also terrified by his last remarks. I didn't even see him when we pulled up to the gas station, so how did he know I wasn't alone? I figured he must have been watching my girlfriend. And when we arrived, the car was finally filled up and I saw my girlfriend walking toward the car with bags full of snacks for the road. I noticed the weird guy was still at the gas station. He was a few pumps away from us, leaning up against an old red pickup truck. But to my utter discomfort, he wasn't alone. There were 2 other men and 1 woman with him, making the group 4 in total. The 2 men were just as big as he was, but they had shaved heads. One of them was wearing a dirty white tank top, and the other had no shirt on at all. The woman was shorter, about 5'5". She was very skinny, with heavy bags under her eyes and long blonde hair. They all looked like they had been living in the woods for the past 10 years. They were staring and pointing at us, talking amongst themselves. As soon as my girlfriend got to the car, I urgently told her to get in. I'm usually a pretty calm guy, so when my girlfriend noticed I was kind of freaking out, she knew something was up. We quickly entered the car. I locked the doors, and I began hauling ass out of the gas station as we pulled around their red truck to the exit. I noticed there was another pentagram painted on the hood. I also noticed the skull of a goat or ram on their windshield. The people began getting into their truck. As they saw us leaving, I knew they were going to follow us as soon as we left. I explained the situation to my girlfriend as we were speeding away from the gas station, we were zooming down the road and I looked in my rearview mirror. As I expected, the red truck was right behind us. I sped up even more, and they did too. I made a left, they did too. I made a full U-turn, and they did as well. My girlfriend managed to get reception and dialed 911. We gave the operator our location, and they gave us directions to the nearest police station. The operator also asked for the license plate, but the truck didn't have any. Once we were off the phone with them, my girlfriend stuck her cell phone outside of the window and started pointing to it, letting the creeps know we called the police. They finally got the message and stopped. Following us, we arrived to the police station and filed a report. We gave them the description of the truck and suspects. The investigators said they would call us if they had any more information. We were extremely shaken, but also relieved. All we wanted to do at that point was get the hell out of West Virginia. We thought we had shaken the group for good, but unfortunately, we were wrong. We decided to drive through the night to cover as much ground as possible. The area of Appalachia we were in had no street lights, and I could only see what my headlights allowed me to see. Everything was fine until I noticed two headlights in my rearview mirror. At first, I didn't think anything of it, but I kept an eye on them. The headlights got closer and closer until they were tailgating us. To my complete shock and horror, it was the same red truck from the gas station. These people had somehow found us again and were right behind us. "It's them," I yelled. My girlfriend began to freak out and dialed 911. I floored the gas pedal, not even knowing what was 10 meters in front of me. All we cared about was escaping. We got a mile up the road until my girlfriend yelled, "Watch out." There were 3 dead cows blocking the narrow road. I slammed on the brakes. The red truck was right behind us and we couldn't go forward. We knew we fell into a trap. All of a sudden, a naked man wearing a goat mask darted from out of the woods and began hitting our car with what looked like a large axe. The naked man got on the hood of our car and started making sheep noises. My girlfriend was still on the phone with 911, but all she could do was scream. The people behind us got out of the red truck and began walking toward our car. 2 of them had rifles and 1 of them had a large machete. I knew what I had to do. I put the car into reverse and floored it. The naked man fell off our car. We smashed into the truck and I managed to knock it into a ditch. After the truck was out of the way, I pulled the fastest U-turn of my life and we got out of there. The people were yelling all kinds of obscenities at us as we drove. Away I drove as fast as I could away from these people, until we finally arrived in a town and filed another police report. My girlfriend and I were uninjured, thankfully, but we were extremely traumatized. The car was still drivable after that, so we were able to get the fuck out of West Virginia the next morning. This entire experience made my girlfriend and I scared to do any more road trips. I still call the local police department in West Virginia once in a while to see if they have any leads on these people, but so far they have not found anything. The fact that these people were able to find us after we went to the police station and drove far away still scares and baffles me to this day. Who knows what kind of sick and twisted things this cult had planned if they managed to catch us. Stay safe out there, everyone. Originally, I'm from West Virginia. I moved around between the Appalachian and the Midwest some as a kid, between the ages of 1014 I lived in rural Kentucky, in the foothills of one of the oldest mountain ranges on the planet. I lived with my dad and my grams. We lived in what we call a holler. Think of it like a cul-de-sac in between a set of foothills. We lived in the middle of the neighborhood with nothing but family on both sides. No one lived across from us or behind us because of the foothills. When I moved in, my grams had some rules I had to follow. At the time, I chalked them up to hillbilly stranger danger. There were things like don't mess around with the wild animals, don't go out into the woods alone. Then they got a little weird, don't whistle. If you hear your name, don't answer and don't go to it. And if you see someone in the woods, you might know. No, you didn't, and just come home. This experience happened in August when I was 12. My dad and I had a mowed path through the tall grass and berry bushes to the left of the double wide we lived in. We camped out there a lot because it was close enough that we could check on my grams. Now, when you're in the woods, things are louder than you think. You have animal life, bugs chattering, wind through the trees and grass. There was a stream that ran along the road you could easily hear. That night, we added the campfire to that list. My dad decided to go back up to the house about a quarter-mile to get more beer and to check on grams. Before he left, he told me not to mess with the fire. After a few minutes of watching the fire, things started to get quiet, like real quiet. The wind had all but stopped. Bug and animal sounds were all gone, and the stream sounded like it was miles away. I was getting uncomfortable, even though I'd been left at the campground before like this. Then I started to smell and taste it. It was in the back of my throat, out of nowhere. This awful metal tamps. After a few more moments of dread, my dad came back. He was mad right away, said he could smell burning metal coming up the trail. He accused me of tossing beer cans in the fire. I told him I didn't, and even pointed to the fire to prove it. He said there was a storm coming in and we needed to get back home, and he let it go. We left the tent and started our way back. Now the very cool, but very weird thing about lightning in woods this dense is when the lighting hits, it lights up everything like the middle of the day. Well, up until the front of the trees. After the first set of trees, it's pitch black. There are no street lights, and unless you have lights on your property, it's completely black dot, so it's pitch black. Lightly raining, and other than the dim lights from the house windows, there's nothing. I'm eating watermelon as one dose in August, in the mountains, when the first clap of lighting hits. Everything is as bright as it can be. After the second passes, it's black as pitch aging. Next clap of lighting comes, and that's when I kind of see it. On the porch, past the yard, over the stream. Past the road and the ditches on either side, just past the first line of trees, I could see the silhouette of it. Then it goes dark. This is also when I can't start to taste that same awful burning metal. I'm not really sure what I saw, so I just kind of stay still. It's a few moments before the lighting hits aging. The figure is now closer, standing side by side to the trees. Then it's back aging. I'm standing now, not sure what to do. It's been 20 years to this day, and I've tried, but could never fully describe what I saw. This thing's head wasn't proportioned to its body. The arms were too long, and the torso didn't fit right. It was like if you asked a blind person to draw what a person looked like. It just didn't look correct. Once the lighting hit aging, the thing is standing in the middle of the road. Not wanting to see this thing get any closer, I go inside. My grams is doing dishes and ask why I'm inside. I tell her I think I saw something. She almost immediately gets my dad on his feet, telling him to shut and lock all the windows and doors. My dad, vaguely drunk, obeys. That night, I sleep with her. The next day we discover the tent door is torn off. It didn't look like an animal. Things weren't cut or shredded, but looked like someone took and pulled it apart. My uncle, who lived a mile or so up, had all 8 chickens killed. Heads gone, no blood. The next few weeks, all the kids had to wait for the bus with an adult. My dad had to be late for work for almost 3 weeks. Anytime I tried to talk about it, I just had the subject change. I just figured I was a kid and it wasn't important or real. It wasn't until years later I finally understood. I was in my early 20s, and some cousins were in town for Halloween. As I was telling this story, my aunt got irate with me, saying, "Don't you tell them that. Don't you put that evil on them." After, I couldn't help but think back on all the times I tried to talk about it and how I was shunned. My kid mind not realizing it wasn't as simple as a subject change, but then actively shushing me. Once I started dipping my toes in Reddit, I realized there was a name for this fucking thing. The same name my auntie had called it that day at the party, and other people have seen it. The Gomant. What bothers me the most is how to this day I couldn't describe any feature, nor have I ever tasted that awful burning metal taste. So friends, if you ever find yourself in the foothills of Kentucky, please remember my Gram's rules.